James 5, verses 7 through 12. Therefore, brothers and sisters, you must be patient as you wait for the coming of the Lord. Consider the farmer who waits patiently for the coming of the rain in the fall and spring, looking forward to the precious fruit of the earth. You must also patiently wait, strengthening your resolve, because the coming of the Lord is near. Don't complain about each other, brothers and sisters, so that you won't be judged. Look, the judge is standing at the door. Brothers and sisters, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord as an example of patient resolve and steadfastness. Look at how we honor those who have practiced endurance. You have heard of the endurance of Job, and you have seen what the Lord has accomplished, for the Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Most important, my brothers and sisters, never make a solemn pledge, neither by heaven nor earth nor by anything else. Instead, speak with a simple yes or no, or else you may fall under judgment.
Thanks, Catherine. Good reading. I'm not going to conduct the choir. I'm just stealing Eric's thing. I would not be able to swing that, let me tell you. So, a few weeks ago in October, I was talking with my son-in-law about, remember Joshua and Michaela, the guy who said that the Lord would return September 23rd or 24th, 2025, and this was in October. We were talking about this, and we were kind of walking through this. And my 10-year-old granddaughter was there and overhearing us discuss this. And she says, what are you talking about? What is this rapture? And so, because she's a good Anglican kid, so she's, they go to the Anglican church. I don't think they've talked about this. Anyway, so she said, what is this? And so we explained to her, well, this is Jesus comes and takes everybody out of the world and takes them to heaven. And she got this really surprisingly frightened look on her face. And she says, I don't want Jesus to take me out of here. I like my life. What a lucky kid. She's got friends, she's got family, she's got a secure life, she can go to school, everything is ordered and everything like that. And so she, couldn't see it. Whereas some of us who've been around a little bit longer have suffered the pains and slings and arrows, as Shakespeare would say, we'd like to get pulled out of here because it would relieve some of the pain and the loss and the difficulties and all of that. Because life just isn't a bed of roses, it's got thorns too. But when you're 10, it's a little different. James's audience definitely suffered. His whole letter actually was designed to help his audience facing difficulty to bear up, be patient, and figure out how they're going to deal with the tests of life. And as we're getting into the late part of chapter 5, James is trying to close off his letter. He's finishing out. And so he points to a yearning that they're all feeling for the coming of the Lord. This coming would relieve pain and loss and difficulty and hard times. So I think we can learn from this a little bit here this morning. And actually, there's a role that James has his people play, and I think it's a role that we can play too. Because after all, it's been 2,000 years and the Lord still hasn't come back. And as I was thinking about this, what came to mind was Isaiah 40, verse 3. Pave the way for the Lord to come. Pave a highway for our God, said Isaiah. John the Baptist did that for Jesus, and I think we as faithful disciples also do that for Jesus. We pave the way for Jesus to come. So that's why my lesson is entitled, Paving the Way for Jesus to Come Through Patience, Unity, and Integrity. And those three words come from the text. So let's talk about being patient. Therefore, brothers and sisters, you must be patient as you wait for the coming of the Lord. Consider the farmer who waits patiently for the coming of the rain in the spring and fall, looking forward to the precious fruit of the earth. You also must wait patiently, strengthening your resolve, because the coming of the Lord is near. twice, right? Two reinforcements. First word, therefore. I'd like to just park on that for 1 second. Why does James say therefore? We know why therefores are there, because we're looking ahead of that and say, well, okay, what's he talking about? But this little passage doesn't seem to apply directly to the stuff that we learned about last week, which was about, oh, you rich, despair and howl and wail. I think the therefore actually harkens back to the entire letter that James has been writing. Being patient applies to everything that James has said. And if you recall from chapter 1, James says, count it all joy when you encounter all kinds of tests. If you're steadfast, you will receive a crown of life. That's chapter 1. His whole book is starting with how do you endure tests? How do you make this happen? And then the rest of the book is like all kinds of specific examples of how they should pass, what tests they should pass. So temptation to anger, don't be angry. Showing favoritism, helping the needy, really, not just offering platitudes. Controlling the tongue, curbing selfishness. Even how to plan ahead. I'm just giving you snippets of the whole book. All these are tests of faithful discipleship. Therefore, he says now, be patient until the coming of the Lord. I was thinking that compared to the rest of the world, life is pretty good for us. We're not persecuted. We're mostly comfortable. And, we do face trials, yes, for sure. And actually, lots of losses hit us. We've talked about the loss of Henry Peters, and we acknowledge that again. It's like losses hit us. Loss of health, loss of relationships. We lose money. We sometimes lose security. We lose old familiar ways. When that happens, those temptations and difficulties that James talks about actually apply to us. We can get mad. We can't control our tongues. We are given to gossip. We might be more selfish than generous because we worry about those losses and we become a little bit more selfish. Or, because we live in relatively secure and stable environments, we plan ahead, but then we forget to, consult the Lord. We also, have fears. Fears like, I'll fail the test, I'll fail a job interview. I fear a medical diagnosis. I fear being taken down a path I don't want to take. I might even fear some things that might change in my church. These have led to broken relationships in the past, so these fears are real. And it's at the onset of those losses and fears that we must practice patience. James points to the farmer who, waits patiently for the rains to come in the fall and in the spring. My brother-in-law has been farming for over 50 years, and he's seen it all, believe me. He's seen too much rain, he's seen too little rain, he's seen hail, he's seen one of his tractors burn in the field, low prices, and lo and behold, something new, tariffs, and where is he going to get rid of his canola and all of that, right? So he's seen it all, and he's still seeing it all. But he's mostly retired or semi-retired, and these days he very patiently offers perspective to his son who has taken over the farm. And it's kind of neat to watch how that works. Part of patience also in the end of this little section is this word, strengthen your resolve. So we can talk about patience like this and say, yeah, we should be patient. But then James catches you and says, strengthen your resolve. There is something to do within ourselves to really put that forward. There's another translation that says, establish your hearts. Establish your hearts to be patient. Patience doesn't just happen. We practice it. We pray for it. We decide to do it, to have patience and to work on it. it's a practice of hope, because when we're patient, we know that the Lord's coming is at hand. The second thing, so be patient, number one. Number two, could be, I have a whole string of words for the second point, but it is unity, okay? Unity is the word. But it's like, don't complain about each other, or as our small group coordinator says, root for each other. I really like that a lot. Root for each other. Live in unity, okay? That's number two. Here's the text. Don't complain about each other, brothers and sisters, so that you won't be judged. Brothers and sisters, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord as an example of patient resolve and steadfastness. Look at how we honor those who have practiced endurance. You've heard of the endurance of Job, and you've seen how what the Lord has accomplished, for the Lord is full of compassion and mercy. I'd like to focus on this first bit. Don't complain about each other. It's a very unique Greek word. It really is something like, don't grudge on each other. Don't grudge each other. Don't murmur against each other. The idea is obviously really straightforward. We can make tough times a lot worse by throwing each other under the bus, by saying, shoot, it's your fault that all of this has happened, or there's a scapegoat, you are to blame. And of course, we make it a lot worse by gossiping. So we talk about each other and we throw each other under the bus when we're not even around. Is that right? Does that happen? No, nobody gossips in Westwood. Right? So this is the thing. Grudging each other. There's a funny connotation to this word. We throw each other under the bus. And James says, don't do it. Why? So that we won't be judged. I've noticed that James talks about judging quite a few times in his book. In chapter 2, he says, don't discriminate, because discrimination makes us judges, and that's not a good idea. In chapter 4, he says, the one who speaks against another judges, and even that puts them in the position of judging the law. Isn't that wild? So we judge each other, and it puts us above the law and says, oh, now you're a judge of the law. And then he quotes Jesus here from Matthew 7, and he says, don't judge so that you yourselves won't be judged. It's a pretty simple equation. I judge you today, you'll judge me tomorrow. I gossip about you today, and for sure you're going to be gossiping about me tomorrow. So I like this idea, don't set up a grudge match. If we're grudging each other, don't set up a grudge match, because it's inevitable when we do. James says something pretty graphic to the person that's judgy. The judge is standing by the door. And it sounds like a real threat. And I thought, okay, who's this judge? Who's the judge? The judge is standing by the door. Well, that judge could be the rich person that he's just talked about in the first part of chapter 5, who will gladly take you to court if he finds out, and this is James's context, right? The rich person who will gladly take you to court, and you're going to be in trouble. Or maybe the person we complained about has connections, and they'll take you to court. And then, of course, there's God, who's the ultimate judge, and he judges our motives. He can see through our hearts, and he sees what's going on. So what's this about? James was trying to get people to support each other patiently through desperate times. Supporting each other patiently through desperate times. And they walked a very narrow path of very limited human rights. So when the rich and powerful run things, the poor always suffer. We have to hang together, or we'll suffer worse, because they have all the advantages. They own all the judges, and the reprisals could be harsh. This is James's message to his people. Stay together, hold each other up, support each other, because the outside world is really harsh. Now, come to today, I'd like to hearken back to Trent's message the other day. Control your tongue and control your thumbs, right? Love that. That's such a brilliant metaphor. In today's today's world, we got tons of avenues to, really throw each other under the bus. We have coffee shop chatter and gossip and whatnot, but we have social media too. So on Facebook, we can really go to town with our thumbs, and here's how a discussion usually works on Facebook. If somebody says something, somebody responds and says, that's dumb. And then, you're an idiot for saying that. And then, oh yeah, here's 10 ways you're a bigger idiot, right? So it goes nowhere good, okay? It goes nowhere good. So that is grudging one another, and we can do a lot better. Tells me that patience not only applies to our personal tests, patience also applies to our body. It applies interpersonally. Because really what this is all about is being patient with each other, trying to find out what the other person is thinking. And he just talks about the prophets. Remember the prophets? They were really patient. They had resolve, they had steadfastness. Look how they suffered for their words. You remember the test of the prophet was, did their prophecies come true? How many of them lived to actually see that happen? Not many. So that was real patience, if you want to really talk about patience. Those prophets never saw the things that they predicted. And of course, Job, the model of suffering, he had friends who threw him under the bus. He had his wife tell him, why don't you just curse God and die? She was ready to help him do that. And James reminds the church, just look at how the Lord has worked in our lives. Look at how much he's accomplished. God is full of compassion and mercy. This is the way we should be with each other too. Let's be full of compassion and mercy. I've seen our church go through, I've been a member of our church since 1989, so do the math, that's 37 years. I'm just like my brother-in-law, I've seen it all, this thick and thin. And, we've had our occasions when things didn't work out, and we were really hard on each other, and we forgot how to love and give compassion and mercy to each other a few times. And, it gets out of control, and you can't stop it, and stuff kind of blows up. So there's real consequences, right? There's real consequences. Let's root for each other. Let's hold each other up. Be patient and merciful and gracious to each other. Like a winning team. For all you who are watching the Grey Cup, those guys all root for each other. Third, most important, my brothers and sisters, never make a solemn pledge, neither by heaven or earth, nor by anything else. Instead, speak with a simple yes or no, or else you may fall under judgment. Don't swear oaths, which really means live lives of integrity. Most important? I was really intrigued by the fact that James put it this way. Most important. James quotes Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount again, who said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything more than that comes from evil. That's what Jesus said. James says, anything like that and you could be judged. There's that judgy question again. And at first, like I said, this verse seemed a little bit strange. Why did it belong here? And then I kind of figured it out. I can face life's trials and tests better if my integrity is intact, if I haven't created problems for myself with shady communication. Because shady communication forces me to say, I swear I am telling the truth this time. Right? This time. And because I just said being patient with each other, it's an interpersonal thing. We can do so much better and trust each other when we have been rooting for each other and being careful about our communication with each other. We can face trials as a community if we've been honest and clear with each other. We can trust one another. This builds unity. We haven't gossiped about each other. We haven't thrown each other under the bus. Our word is true. So yes, most important. Most important. I've been enjoying teaching Anabaptist Essentials, a little book that we've been doing in Sunday school class just before church with Andrew Redicop on Sunday mornings. Here's a couple of lines. Jesus is the center of our faith. Community is the center of our life. And there's a third. Reconciliation is the center of our work. But community is the center of our life. Community is where we forgive. We discern the path of God together. And we're accountable to each other. Those are three things that we've talked about. When these things are in operation, when we're forgiving, when we're listening to God together, and when we're accountable to each other, we don't have to swear we're telling the truth because our words have been true all the way along. By the way, did you know that don't take oaths, don't swear oaths is in our confession of faith? That dates back all the way to 1500, because when the Anabaptists were doing the Radical Reformation, they were saying to themselves, what are the key confessional values we want to hang on to? And one of the things they came up with was, don't swear oaths. So we've caught this in our theological heritage for 500 years. And did you know that if you're a Mennonite, which you are if you belong to this church, you can go to a court. If you're ever stuck in court, you do not have to swear on the Bible. You can just simply say, I'm a Mennonite, and I affirm to tell the truth. It has lasted 500 years, and by law, they will believe your word because you are a Mennonite. Doesn't that just blow your mind? Our reputation is we tell the truth all the time. So, let's tell the truth in church. So to sum up, patience, unity, and integrity is how we pave the way for Jesus' coming. Because I believe we have a role to play in the coming of the Lord. And to explain that, I would like to give you two parables to kind of round out my message. One is from the wilderness idea in the Bible. I got this from the Bible Project people. Wilderness is all over the place. For example, Moses had to go into the wilderness to learn what it meant to be a leader and prepare to lead Israel into out of Egypt and into the Promised Land. So the wilderness was a shaping device for Moses. Wilderness wanderings prepared Israel to enter the Promised Land. John the Baptist worked in the wilderness to prepare the way for Jesus, and that's given his role is given that interpretation. Jesus himself went into the wilderness right after his baptism, though in his case, he proved he was ready to be the Messiah as he identified with all who suffer hunger and have no rights and all of that. The wilderness is a place of deprivation to teach us that we can love and be identified with those who suffer and strengthen our faith in Jesus. So our times of testing help us locate ourselves in Jesus, the sufferer and the one who was in the wilderness often. The ultimate wilderness test, of course, is death. And these trials and tests prepare us for our own death, for our own transition into God. And my comfort is at exactly that point, Jesus meets me. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, there you are with me. So these testings are a wilderness for us to meet Jesus. The second parable comes from Teresa of Avila, the mystic from the 16th century. She lived about the same time as the Anabaptists were doing their Reformation and all that. And you know what? Teresa is a pretty ordinary person. You can go to Avila, Spain, and you can still see the house where she, grew up and the yard she played in and all that stuff. Ordinary person. But she determined that she needed to follow God more directly by going to the convent. And so she entered a convent. And in there, she had some really interesting experiences of God. And she wrote about those. Now, at some point when she got there, the convent was embroiled in a big political debate. There were sides drawn up. A bunch of nuns were on this side, a bunch of nuns were on that side, and they were really having a hard time with each other. So, 500 years ago, today, no different, right? Plus ça change, as they say. So, but she was sitting in the chapel one day, and she was just meditating, and God said to her, Teresa, why are you so concerned about such things? Seek me. Seek me. She did. And she had these wonderful encounters with God, which she wrote about in The Interior Castle, which is pictured there, and another book called The Way of Perfection. This story of Teresa really spoke to me, folks. I'm like, today is all polarization. We're being pulled, and I feel being pulled into camps and sides. And I hear God just speaking to me and saying, David, seek me. Seek me. And I offer that to you folks today. In the midst of all, there can be all kinds of sides drawn up, whether it's in church or in your home, at work. Just to be able to be calm for a minute. And Teresa's just an ordinary woman listening to God. And God will say to you, seek me. That's the job, right? Seek me. So, this is how we do it. We are patient with each other. We love one another. We're patient with our testings. We seek God in the middle of it all. But there's more. Teresa of Avila, what if God really does, you're seeking God, and what if he really pours himself out to you? And Teresa was in chapel in another moment, and she's like, suddenly it just felt like God was just flowing into her, right? And she is a mystic, right? This may not happen to you, but it might. But it's like Teresa was sitting there in meditation or the scriptures or prayer, and she just felt like God was flowing into her. And she felt like her heart was like a basin. And the presence of God just kept flowing in and flowing in and flowing in. And she'd think, well, I'm going to overflow. But she didn't. Her heart just enlarged and enlarged and enlarged, so that she just received more and more and more of God, and there was no boundary. None. And this is what God will do to you, for you, in you, with you. He will fill you up, and you'll just, expand for more. You'll never be full. Isn't that fantastic? So, are we yearning for the coming of the Lord? Yes, we are. James's people were. We are. The New Testament writers thought Jesus would come physically, and we still wait for that. Every eye will see him. And yet, while we wait, let's open our hearts to the presence of the Lord. He will come. We pave the way for the Lord Jesus as we're patient with our own testings, with each other, with our integrity word. He comes. So let us open our hearts and wait for him to come. And bring it on. Bring it on, folks. Even so, come, Lord Jesus. Amen.